All right, welcome to Solving Equations. You have been doing lots of work on solving equations, and these ones are a little tough. This is actually equivalent to high school algebra. This is what I would have taught in first quarter of high school algebra class, which in Arizona we teach to ninth graders, or if they're honor students, they could be ahead. But what we're going to look at is when you have multiple terms on both sides of the equal sign. Before we hit that part, however, I want to make sure you can handle multiple terms on one side of the equal sign. Here's our equal sign. And look at all the stuff happening on that left side. We've got a 3x, we've got to take away 7, we've got a plus 9, we've got a parentheses with the 2x minus 8, and then over here, hello little 26, how are you doing? All by itself. So when you have all of this action on one side of the equal sign, you cannot solve the equation until you use the distributive property and combine like terms. You need to simplify it. It's a mess right now. So let's just pretend, like put your hand over the equals 26, and we'll just pretend it's not there, and let's clean this side up. Order of operation tells us I'm going to have to use the distributive property first because we have to multiply before we can add and subtract. So that means I'm not doing anything with 3x, leave the takeaway 7 alone, but I am going to take this positive 9 times 2x and get me 18x, and take my positive 9 times negative 8 and get negative 72. And again, we didn't touch the equals 26, it just stayed the same. All right. Now that we've used the distributive property, we need to group up our matches. So here I have a 3x. Any other x's? Oh, look at that, plus 18x. No other x's. So positive 3 and positive 18 give me a positive 21. Now I've got to take away 7. Any other regular numbers? Yep, take away 72. So negative 7 and negative 72 is negative 79. So 21x, take away 79 equals 26. Now it looks like an equation you can solve. We just go to our next strategy. The equal sign is the great divide. If you ever cross the equal sign, you have to keep it in balance, which means if you do something to the left, you have to do it to the right to keep it in balance. It's like a scale. All this over here weighs 26. In order to cross the equal sign, you have to use what I call order of operations backwards. We're going to first get rid of subtraction, then multiplication. If there were exponents, they would go next, parentheses. But in this case, I just have multiplying and I have subtraction. So let's do the opposite. The opposite of subtracting 79 is to add. So we add 79 to both sides of the equal sign, and that keeps it in balance. And what's great is negative 79 plus 79 is 0. Leaves me a 21x, and 26 plus 79 is 105. Now it's 21 times x. So to undo multiplying, the opposite of multiplying is divide. So I divide the left by 21 and the right by 21. And 21 divided by 21 is 1x, yay! And 105 divided by 21 is 5. So we solved it. Wow! Took all of this, whittled it down, and we know x equals 5. And you can always check your work. You can go back and put the x right here of 5 and do 3 times 5, take away 7, plus 9, and what's 2 times 5, take away 8? That'd be 2 times 5 is 10, take away 8 is 2, so you have 9 times 2. And then you would see if it equals 26. You can always check your work. Now what I'd like you to do right off the bat here is I want you to practice these two problems. You have a big mess of stuff here on the left, a negative 5 plus 2x plus 3 times 4x minus 8 equals 27. Work through it step by step, just go straight down. And then after you're done with that, take a look at this next one, and I also want you to solve it. So pause the video, work out these two problems, and then we're going to walk through them together to make sure your work and my work look exactly the same, so we're on the same page before we go to the next level. Ha 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 ha. Here we are. Welcome back. Hope you had fun. So let's take a look at that very first problem. What did you decide to do first? Hopefully you're saying, yeah, I took care of the distributive property. Excellent, because we're going to leave this equals 27 alone. We have to clean up this side. Let's simplify it. And since we have multiplication or the distributive property here, it has to go first. So you wrote down your negative 5, you wrote your plus 2x, and now you wrote plus 12x, and positive 3 times negative 8 is negative 24. So our first step should look pretty good. All right. We don't have any more of the distributive property, so let's group up our matches. -5 and -24 give me -29. Good. And 2x and 12x equal, they're both positive, 14x. Now, you could have written the 14x here and the take away 29 there. It doesn't matter. It's the same thing. All right. So what we'll do now is when we cross that equal sign, we have to do the inverse operations. We have to do the opposite. And since this is a -29, in order to move it to the other side, I have to do the opposite of a -29, which is to add 29. So I add 29 here, and -29 plus 29 is 0, leaves me just a 14x. And 27 plus 29 is 56. So far, so good. And 14 times x, the opposite of multiplying by 14 is to divide by 14. So you divide both sides by 14. And 14 divided by 14 is 1x. And 56 divided by 14 is 4. Okay. So if you got 4 and I got 4, we are doing pretty good. And you could substitute that in right up here and resolve it with that 4 there and see if it works. It will, I promise. Okay. Same thing on this problem. A lot happening here, but we are not touching that equals 19 until we simplify all of this. And this parenthesis stands out to me. I think we need to do the distributive property first. So leave your -8x there, your take away 4, and now we have +6 times -2x, which is -12x. +6 times -7 is -42. -8x, take away 4, take away 12x, take away 42 equals 19. Again, who cares that it equals 19? We still have to clean this up. Let's look for matches. I've got a -8x and a -12x. So that gives a -8 and a -12 is a -20. And then I have -4 and a -42. So we have -20x take away 46 equals 19. Now we can start balancing things out or unbalancing them. Well, we have to keep it in balance, so don't unbalance it. Here we go. In order to get x alone, we're going to do order of operations backwards. So we're not going to get rid of multiplying first. We have to get rid of subtraction first. And the opposite of subtracting 46 is to add 46. And -46 plus 46 is 0, which leaves me just this -26 on the left. And 19 plus 46 gives us 65. Now, I know the other problems all went in evenly, so if you got a little stressed when you hit this point, you're like, wait, 20 times what is 65? It doesn't go in evenly. You're right, it doesn't, but that's okay. So I have -20 times x, and the opposite of multiplying by -20 is to divide by -20. And yes, that means 65 divided by -20. -20 divided by -20 is +1. And 65 divided by -20, positive divided by negative is a negative. And it goes in 3 1/4 times or 3.25. Either answer is correct. Doesn't matter to me, but you have to have the negative sign. That's really crucial. Okay. So those are the steps when you have a lot of terms on one side of the equal sign. Let's take a look at how to solve it if you have multiple terms on both sides. All right, so in the previous 3 problems, all of the terms that needed to be grouped were on one side of the equal sign, and we used combining like terms to add them up or group them up before we could solve. Now, when we look at an equation like this, I've got a 5x plus 6 equals 2x minus 12. We have x's and numbers on both sides of the equal sign, and we want to know how we handle it. And it won't be doing combining like terms, because combining like terms happens only on one side. Okay, before we can solve for x, we're going to need to get the x's to one side of the equal sign and the numbers to the other. And to be honest with you, I could move this 5x to the right and be just fine, or the 2x to the left. It doesn't matter where you move them as long as you use the right strategy. And in order to move anything across an equal sign, you have to use inverse operations. Which means if I want a 5x to move to the other side, remember this is the balance, everything stays in balance. If I move 5x by subtracting 5x, I have to subtract it from over here. So you have to use inverse operations. You have to do the opposite. So let's just walk through this particular problem. And what I'm going to show you here is I made the equal sign great big. I made it in red, changed the color, because I want you to know anytime you cross this line, you have to do inverse operations. You have to do the opposite. I also mentioned it doesn't matter if you move all the x's left or all the x's to the right. But in this case, I'm going to go ahead and move the 2x to the left so it can be grouped with the 5x because I need to group them up. Now, if we notice, the 2x is positive. If I want to move it to the other side, I have to do the opposite of what a positive 2x is. What's the opposite of positive? Negative. So that means subtract. So I'm going to have to subtract 2x from the left, subtract 2x from the right. And 2x take away 2x is 0x. So I'm just left over here with a take away 12 or a negative 12. And 5x take away 2x is 3x. The plus 6 did nothing. And there's my massive equal sign. Now I'm going to go ahead and treat this not as one of the previous problems, but I want to go ahead and continue grouping. So let's just talk about this plus 6. I want to move it over here. Again, if I cross that equal sign, I have to do the opposite of what's going on here. Right now it's being added, so the opposite of adding 6 is to subtract 6 from both sides of the equal sign, keeping it in balance. I'm left with that positive 3x. 6 take away 6 is 0. Negative 12 take away 6 is negative 18. Now we can just solve it like we normally would. I mean, we're in the final step here. All I have is multiplication left, 3 times x. 3 times what is negative 18? Well, what's the opposite of multiplying by 3? Divide by 3. Again, both sides of the equal sign, keep it in balance. 3 divided by 3 is 1, and negative 18 divided by 3 is negative 6. Okay, that one wasn't too bad because there really wasn't much going on. All we had to do is move our 2x to one side. And again, if you cross the equal sign, you have to do the opposite. The opposite of a positive 2x is to subtract 2x. Now I made a bigger mess on one side. All right. And so we have negative 2x plus 3 minus 4x equals 10x plus 67. I put this as a reminder. In order to move a number or variable across the equal sign, you have to use inverse operations. The equal sign. Yes, make them nice and big. So if you cross the line, got to use the equal sign. Got to do inverse operations. Oh, I talk too much. Okay. Well, look at what we have going here. I have a negative 2x and a take away 4x. If we just ignore all of this over here, the first thing I have to do is group things up on the left. You do that by just adding. Negative 2x and negative 4x is negative 6x. So if you don't cross the equal sign, it is just combining like terms. You just use the sign. I could have circled this one, circled that one. I go, oh, I got a negative 2x and a negative 4x. It's negative 6x. Could have put a triangle around my positive 3. Oh, there's no other numbers and just wrote positive 3. All right. Now I need to cross the equal sign because I want to get my 10x and I want to move it over here. And this is positive 10x. And to move a positive 10x over to the negative 6x, I will have to subtract because the opposite of positive 10 is a negative 10. Again, when I move something across the equal sign, I just don't get to add them up. I have to do the opposite. And the opposite of a positive 10x is to subtract 10x. And negative 6x, take away 10x is negative 16x. I still have my plus 3, still have my huge equal sign, I still have my positive 67. All right, now I think you got the hang of it from here. When I want to group my numbers up all the way to the other side, I need to do the opposite. And the opposite of a positive 3 is to subtract 3. And I'm going to subtract 3 from both sides of the equal sign. So I have negative 16x equals, what's 67 minus 3? Come on, you got it. 64. Very good. Now we're just keep on solving it. You got this. The opposite of multiplying by negative 16x, divide by negative 16x on both sides of the equal sign. Negative 16 divided by negative 16 is positive 1x. And positive 64 divided by negative 16 is negative 4. We did it. All right, so that's with multiple terms on both sides of the equal sign. How are you feeling about it? Or are you just like, ah, I got this. This is so good. This is so good. This is like Christmas morning. It's happening. Yeah. Well, since it was happening for you, it's happening some more. All right, so we have some bigger equations here I want you to work on. Take your time. Again, ignore the right side until you simplify this. And what are you going to have to do now that you see the parentheses there? Yeah, the distributive property. You're right. I want you to solve the first one, and then I want you to solve the second one. You can do it. Pause the video. When you come back, we will talk about it. Welcome back. It is now time to talk about how to solve these two fabulous problems that you have been working on. And as we spoke prior to you pausing this video, we knew we needed to do the distributive property. So we left the 2x alone. You did negative 3 times 1x, which is negative 3x. And negative 3 times negative 3 is positive 9. So you just ignored the negative 2x plus 24. Thank you for ignoring it, because you have to clean this side up or simplify it before we can deal with the other half. All right, I have 2x take away 3x. So we've got to group up our x's, so combining like terms, and 2 take away 3 is negative 1. And so I'm just going to write negative x because it's assumed that there's a 1 there. If you put a 1 there, that's totally fine. No one's going to get mad at you today. So we have negative 1x plus 9 equals negative 2x plus 24. Now we got to get these x's together, and it doesn't matter if you add the 2x here or add the x here, but when you cross that equal sign, just make sure you're doing inverse operations. And I'm going to go ahead and move my negative 2x to the left by adding 2x, because the opposite of a negative 2x is to add 2x. So over here I have negative x plus 2x. What's negative 1 plus 2? Just 1. So I have 1x plus 9 equals 24, because we didn't touch the 24, we just brought it down. Now I have to do the opposite of adding 9, and the opposite of adding 9 is to subtract from both sides of the equal sign. And 24 take away 9 is 15. Game over! How did you do? Yeah, pretty good, huh? Because you could go back and do 2 times 15, so you have 30. Take away 3, parentheses, 15 minus 3 is 12, and what's 3 times 12? You got negative 3 times 12, so you've got negative 36. So you just 30 minus negative 30. I mean, you're just cruising. You can just totally get this. I bet you did. Okay, part 2. Did you do the distributive property first? We had to clean up the left. Okay, so 5 times 1x is 5x. 5 times negative 5 is negative 25, and then we had that negative 3x. And you just ignored this side, just left it alone, just kept writing it down. Let's group up our matches. Oh, looks like all we have are x's. So I have 5x, which is positive, and take away 3x. Because we're not crossing the equal sign, I do it just the way it's shown. 5x, take away 3x. If I had to cross the equal sign, it'd be a different story, but I'm just on the left side, so 5x, take away 3x is 2x. I still have my negative 25, I just dropped it down, and 4x minus 35, we haven't even touched that side. But because the 5x and the negative 3x live on the same side of the equal sign, we just add them up the way we normally would. All right, now I'm going to switch things up. If you didn't do it this way, it's okay. I'm going to move my 2x over here. Yep, I'm going to move it to the right. Oh yeah, I told you you could go either way, I just haven't done it yet. How do I move a 2x? It's positive. Hopefully you're saying subtract. So I subtract 2x from both sides of the equal sign. If I want to move it across the equal sign, I have to do the opposite, and it's positive, and the opposite would make it negative. That leaves me this negative 25, and 4x take away 2x is 2x, and I still have my negative 35. Yeah, I'm switching things up. Okay, so I have a 2x here. I don't have any more x's, so let's go ahead and I'm going to move my 35, my negative 35 to over here with the negative 25. And the opposite of subtracting 35 is to add 35 to both sides of the equal sign. And negative 25 plus 35 is 10. And I drop down my 2x. Okay, so 10 equals 2 times what? Well, how do I get rid of multiplying by 2? Divide both sides by 2. And 10 divided by 2 is 5, and 2 divided by 2 is 1x, and we have 5 equals x, or x equals 5. See, I told you could do it either way. You could have moved the 4x over here, and then the 25 over there, and you would have gotten 5 anyway. I think you got this. You are coming along fantastically. Keep up the great work. You can do it. You're doing algebra. Ta-da!